let's move on to these Supreme Court cases. Let's see what's going on over here. I'm going to start with this one. So there were, as far as I'm aware, I think 4 different cases that were decided today. We're going to go over each of them. I'll give my analysis on each of them, and we'll see what happens.
Hi, I'm Diana Macedo. We have breaking news. The Supreme Court has issued 2 major rulings on immigration. The justices are allowing President Trump to turn away asylum seekers at the U.S.-Mexico border. They're also clearing the way for the Trump administration to cancel temporary protected status for Syrians and Haitians living in the U.S. Senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer and ABC News legal.
Okay. So turning away people at the border is technically illegal under UN, under our obligations to the UN. I'm pretty sure. I tried to like look it up, and it's a lot of legalese and stuff. And I know that international law is basically dead now. But we are signed on to this convention relating or I think it's the convention relating to the status of refugees, or at least the 1960 version, I guess, 1967 protocol. Let me see if there's any difference here. It entered, remove both the temporal and geographic restrictions. This was needed. Okay, so it's like a more restricted version, I guess. Okay, interesting. Anyway, but yeah, so rights and responsibilities of parties under this charter, under international law. The contracting states shall exempt refugees from reciprocity after 3 years. That means that the granting of a right to a refugee should not be subject to the granting of similar treatment by the refugee's country of nationality, because refugees do not enjoy the protection of their home state. Be able to take provisional measures against a refugee if needed in the interests of essential national security. I mean, I guess maybe you could make that argument, like, or you could try to, if you believe, like, I mean, it's not a real thing, but a lot of these people like use the argument of national security. But yeah, respect to refugees' personal status and the rights that come with it, particularly rights related to marriage. Provide free access to courts for refugees. Provide administration assistance for refugees. Provide identity papers for refugees. Provide travel documents for refugees. Allow refugees to transfer their assets. Provide the possibility of assimilation and naturalization to refugees. To cooperate with the UNHCR in the exercise of its functions. I don't know what that one is. Provide information on any national legislation that may adopt to ensure the application of the convention, settle disputes they may have with other contracting states at the International Criminal or International Court of Justice, if not otherwise possible. The contracting states shall not discriminate against refugees, take exceptional measures against a refugee solely on account of his or her nationality, aka if they are particularly Syrian or Haitian, or there have been, a bunch of like racist agitprop stories about particular refugees. I don't think that you're allowed to do that, but expect refugees to pay taxes and fiscal charges that are different from those of nationals. Impose penalties on refugees who entered illegally in search of asylum if they present themselves without delay. Expel refugees, forcibly return or refile refugees to the country they have fled from. It is widely accepted that the prohibition of forcible return is part of customary international law. This means that even states that are not party to the 1951 Refugee Convention must respect the principle of non-refoulement. Therefore, states are obligated under the convention and under customary international law to respect the principle of non-refoulement. So, anyway. So that's like the international law side of it, but I know that it doesn't really matter that much anymore. Like I said, we specifically killed international law by allowing Israel to commit genocide in Gaza, and that was I don't think people understand this. That was an intentional choice that we made as America, because we are in our declining phase of an empire, and as an empire declines, it gets rid of a lot of the it tends to get rid of a lot of like the niceties that it, like the institutions that it used to justify its existence. Like this has happened before in previous empires as well. And it tosses that to the side, and then it just becomes a raw like imposition of power. And you have to understand it as a form of lashing out. It's a power, a global power who has lost like has lost the ability to influence the world and lost the power to influence the world through like through soft power and like those types of initiatives. And then they just fall back to hard power. Like this has happened a lot throughout history. So I think that that's kind of the way that I would understand a lot of this stuff is, you know, and also like America's descent into fascism is also a part of that global decline as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening here, but I would just say it's bad, generally speaking. I don't like I personally, I believe in like the idea of international law and like providing for refugees. I think it, you know, it makes the entire world a better place. And I don't like when, you know, when powers like exercise their control over these arbitrary things that we call borders to then, you know, prevent people from being able to flee war-torn areas or poverty or whatever. Like I actually like that sort of stuff, and also I think it's beneficial for America as well, because a lot of these people are very hardworking. They're very, you know, good citizens. They you know, immigrants commit crime at a far less rate than natural born citizens. Also, for all the freaks out there who care about birth rates and shit, if you're like one of those people who cares about birth rates, there's literally no way to solve like a birth rate collapse without importing more immigrants. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, or without getting more immigrants to come to your country. It's like the number one thing that you need to do if you want to actually improve birth rates. But, you know, that sort of contradictory position is yeah, that's one of those things. It's like, well, nobody will ever admit that. Like none of these people who care about birth rates would ever admit that. So, but yeah, I don't know. I just think this is mean and wrong, and I don't think that we should do it. But, you know, it is what it is.
Legal analyst Sarah Isger are here for more on those decisions. Hi to you both. So, Devin, what impact will this asylum ruling have?
It will have a significant impact down the line, I think, Diane. This was a decision over a policy from the...
Also, the other thing I would say, sorry, before I get back into this video, is a lot of these people who are fleeing these countries are fleeing them specifically because of our incessant meddling in these countries, of our staging coups, of our CIA-backed coups and all that sort of stuff, of us funding cartels, of you know, our military members doing drug runs for them and stuff. Like, you know, a lot of this destabilization that comes in a lot of these countries, particularly in Latin America, have their starts in America, like in American foreign policy. And so in some regard, I also feel like we have a little bit of a duty to accept these people, that like we have destabilized their countries so much that, like, you know, they had to flee from. You know, that's like another aspect of it. But anyway, I'll keep going now.
Down the line, I think, Diane, this was a decision over a policy from the first Trump administration known as metering or turn back. It was basically an effort to shut the door at ports of entry across the southern border to prevent migrants, immigrants, from even stepping foot on U.S. soil to file a claim for asylum. Federal law requires that anyone who arrives in the United States has to be given the chance to apply for asylum, and in many cases then ultimately stay in the United States for a short time. But the Supreme Court said today, if you show up at the doorstep of these ports of entry, you have not arrived in the United States. And so effectively, the government can now close the door and prevent you from even having the opportunity to...
So that's the American federal statute. That is not the international law statute. We are, as far as I'm aware, breaking international law by doing this. And technically we should probably, I think, I don't know exactly how this particular article works or whatever, but I would assume that we would need to be kicked out of it if if we're not abiding by it.
Lodged that claim. It was a 6-3 decision. The 3 liberal justices dissenting. And while this policy is not technically in effect right now, because there are other immigration policies at play, this does clear the way for the Trump administration to have this in its toolkit should there be future surges of migrants along the southern border.
Sarah, you say this asylum case is a test of pure textualism. Why?
Well, this is all about a congressional statute. Congress can change this law tomorrow if they want to. But what you have are the 6 conservative justices saying Congress says arrives in. That means you have to be in the United States. And you have the liberal justices saying, yes, but let's look at the purpose. Let's look at the history of this law that was really about a boat of Jewish immigrants, asylum seekers, turned away during World War II, many of whom then died in the Holocaust. The purpose was not as strictly textual, the liberals say, as the conservatives want. But again, at the end of the day, this is really back to Congress. If they want to change this law, if they want to change whether people arriving at the southern border can apply for asylum, they can do that tomorrow.
Well, it also doesn't matter, though. Like the Supreme Court will find whatever reason with whatever law to get, like I tell people all the time, courts are not an apolitical body. The judicial understanding of law is not something that exists outside of the current political ecosystem that we are currently living in. Okay, it is political power. It is, and there's no objective interpretation of law. These justices have shown time and time again that they are not going to abide by things like precedent. That they are going to overturn longstanding interpretations of law as they see fit, that they will be willy-nilly on whether they're going to be like a constitutional originalist, which, okay, or not, that they don't have any actual principles or anything. But I think that what we should understand, though, is that also can be applied in the reverse as well. It is political power, but we could also, if we wanted to, we could just strip away that power from them. We could have Congress be able to, what Congress says goes, and the Supreme Court can't overrule it or reinterpret it differently or whatever, right? So I don't know. I think that, anyway, I just think that's important for people to be aware of. But even if they go back and change the wording of the law in Congress, then and by the way, our Congress is entirely dysfunctional. Will that new amended law get passed? Probably not. And so it is entirely but even if it did, the Supreme Court would just come up with another reason, man. At least they're slow, it takes them a while to do it, but they would just come up with another reason.
Devin, what does this TPS ruling mean for the thousands of Syrians and Haitians living in the U.S. right now?
Yeah, a second major decision today, Diane, just moments ago from the Supreme Court, also 6-3 with the 3 liberal justices dissenting, involved President Trump's attempt to cancel temporary protected status for hundreds of thousands of Haitian immigrants and 3,000 Syrian immigrants. Federal law allows the Secretary of Homeland Security some discretion to protect people, allow them to live here and work here if the conditions in their home country are deemed unsafe, from war, violence, a natural disaster like an earthquake and the like. For both of these countries, Haiti and Syria, those policies had been renewed multiple times. Thousands of these immigrants have become integrated into our society. Many Haitians, for example, working in the healthcare sector as healthcare aides for senior citizens.
Yeah, they're an incredibly important part of our society. If these people actually get deported, by the way, it's going to look a lot like what we've already seen when it comes to ICE enforcement. It's going to be ICE storming hospitals and taking nurses and just throwing them, black bagging them and throwing them in cars and shit. If they do that, Americans are going to fucking suffer, man. Americans are going to suffer. It sucks. It sucks. Why do we have to suffer because we have a fucking racist in charge of our president or as our president, man? It's so annoying.
But when the Trump administration came in, the secretary abruptly canceled those designation said all of those immigrants must now return home. That was challenged, and the Supreme Court today, in that conservative majority, said that the courts cannot review the secretary's discretionary determination. It's up to her. And she was able to do that. The plaintiffs here had also claimed racial animus on the part of the president, who, of course, has said things derogatory about those countries. And Justice Samuel Alito.
Yeah, he said, I'm pretty sure he propagated the lie that like they were eating cats and dogs or something that was never shown to be true or anything, but he just said it. And yeah, he particularly, I think, really hates Haitians, it seems like.
Alito, in the majority opinion, said he did not see sufficient evidence of a racial animus in these decisions.
Sarah, what went into that decision, and what sort of precedent does it set?
Yeah, I mean, this is really a question of whether the Supreme Court has any role in these types of decisions.
Just so people know what I'm talking about. Starting in September 2024, false claims spread online saying Haitian immigrants were stealing and eating pets in Springfield, Ohio, United States. The claims began with a local Facebook group post claiming a neighbor's daughter's cat had been butchered and spread quickly among far-right and neo-Nazi groups. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see. Most notably, Republican Ohio Senator and vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance, followed by his running mate Donald Trump. Yeah, so he just propagated that. Like, so there's clear, like, it is clear that he is, you know, being racist. Like, okay, do it against a white country then. How about that? let's see you start deporting some white country people. Let's, like, I mean, I don't really actually want to see that, but I'm like, so far it seems like it's been explicitly brown people, right? Explicitly from brown countries. So I don't know. It seems kind of race, you know, like based on race and also based on like being Muslim as well. He has a long history of also creating laws specifically targeting Muslims too.
Decisions that Congress gave to the executive branch, in this case, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, the liberal justices arguing not that judges can review the discretion of the secretary to cancel this program, but that the law does allow them to review the process, that she can, you know, turn it on or off, but she has to follow the correct process to do so, and that she didn't hear the conservative justices saying, you know, she sent the email, they emailed back, this is a box checking exercise, and we're not going to get into the weeds in this.
Devin, the court also struck down Hawaii's law banning guns.
Okay, I've got some other stuff for the other one, so let me go ahead and move on. Okay. Let's see. This one, I think we already kind of talked about it. And so let's go ahead and go to this one. We're going to talk about vampires now. Where are my Twilight fans at? Supreme Court bars vampire rules on gun ownership. Uh-oh. Let's see what these are. The Supreme Court ruled Thursday that states cannot require gun owners to get permission from property owners before bringing guns onto their land. Okay, wait. The Supreme Court ruled Thursday that states cannot require gun owners to get permission from property owners before bringing guns onto their land. So I guess what they're saying is, before, if you had a gun, you would have to ask the person, because okay, I think this came from Hawaii. So I guess in Hawaii, they had a law saying that, you're not allowed to just bring a gun into an establishment without asking them first if they allow guns in. So I guess that's why it's called the vampire rule, because they had to ask for permission beforehand. So in a 6-3 ideologically divided decision, the High Court said that requiring permission in advance is an undue burden on the right to possess and carry a firearm. In most states, gun owners can bring firearms onto private property unless the property owner tells them otherwise. But 5 states, Hawaii, California, Maryland, New York, and New Jersey, have passed laws that require gun owners to get permission in advance. Look, I'm just going to be honest. I don't think this is that huge of a change in terms of like because most of our states They don't have this like law on the books, and from what I can understand, you're still allowed to say no guns on this property, right? Like you can still, if you don't want guns entering your establishment, you can still put up a sign saying no guns allowed in our establishment. And you can also just kick people out for having guns if you want, because you can kick people out for having, or for whatever reason you see fit as a private business owner. So I don't know. This one seems like not that huge of a deal to me, I guess, except for the fact that it's making it like, expanding the right of the Second Amendment. I think that we should be able to legislate and like pass laws regarding gun ownership or whatever. Or like not gun ownership, but like where you're allowed to have guns and stuff. Like I do think that we or like what types of guns you're particularly allowed to like bring places and stuff. Like I do think that we should have laws around that. So like in that regard, I'm a little bit like, I guess you could say I might be a little bit worried that they'll just keep expanding that and not allowing us to legislate at all. Like, when it comes to this, but in this particular instance, I don't see it as that huge of a deal. These regulations are sometimes called vampire laws, so named from Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula, where the count may not enter anywhere at the first unless there be someone of the household who bid him to come in. Justice Samuel Alito, writing for a conservative supermajority, drove a stake through the... Oh my God, dude. This is so cringe. I hate... I guess I hate when people try clever writing. And I don't know. I think that it just annoys me a little bit. But whatever. Drove a stake through the laws by deciding that they hobble what the Second Amendment protects, the right of Americans to carry arms for self-defense as they go about their daily lives. Technically not what the Second Amendment was for. I thought these people were originalists. That is not what it was for. But okay, whatever. This is the latest in a series of cases stemming from the court's landmark 2022 decision, creating a new test to determine. Also, if these people are originalists, they should not allow people to carry anything other than like a bayonet. Like, I'm serious. Like that was how the Second Amendment was. That was what it was referring to, was like bayonets, not like, automatic like AR-15s and stuff, But I mean, again, I'm not a big like whatever, and I don't know, I'm not a huge like anti-gun person. Okay. I just don't, I just, there's particular weapons that I don't think need to be out in the public. That's my personal opinion. But anyway, this is the latest in a series of cases stemming from the court's landmark 2022 decision, creating a new test to determine if a gun regulation is constitutional. And that year, the court decided that in order for a gun regulation to be valid, the government must show that there existed relevant similar regulations at the time of its founding. Stupid reasonings from stupid people, but it's just whatever it takes to be able to get to the policy position that they want to allow. The new rule has confused many lower court judges, leading to wildly different, because it's uninterpretable, man. At the same time, however, the 2022 decision has, in many states, greatly expanded the rights of gun owners. In the years after this decision, nearly 100 gun laws were successfully challenged, according to an analysis by scholars at SMU, the Brennan Center, and the Rand Corporation. While most of those laws were challenged in lower court, the Supreme Court has heard its fair share of gun cases. 2 years ago, the court upheld a law preventing domestic abusers from owning guns. A lower court had invalidated the law before the high court intervened. And earlier this term, the court unanimously limited the use of a gun law used to prosecute President Biden's son Hunter. Yeah, they made it so that drug users can, get guns, or you're not allowed to ban drug users from getting guns. So that was an interesting one. The case, however, did not affect Biden, who was pardoned by his father. Historical arguments were front and center. At the time of the founding, supporters of the law argued in their brief, numerous state laws prohibited entry onto private property without the owner's express consent. Numerous state laws prohibited entry onto private property without the owner's express consent. The law's opponents countered that most people do not care enough to put up signs authorizing firearm possession on their property. the vast majority of public places would become hostile to gun owners. The Supreme Court sided with those challenging the law barring guns on private property. It is funny that they have a perfect example, I guess, of like at the time, like the same argument they used at the time of the founding, that there were state laws that prevented people from bringing guns into private property. But like I said, that's not the point. They're not actually. They don't have any actual principles when it comes to this stuff. It is purely just an exercise in power and expressing that power. Okay, we got one more. This one's for all my Maha mommies out there and Maha daddies. Supreme Court ruling blocks thousands of lawsuits against maker of Roundup weed killer. Sorry, people. If you get cancer, you're stuck with it. You ain't getting any compensation from Roundup or from Bayer. Washington. The Supreme Court sided with the maker of the Roundup weed killer Thursday in a ruling. Are you not going to say the name? It's Bayer. Bayer is the name of the company that makes Roundup. It used to be Monsanto, but now it's Bayer. Thursday, weed killer Thursday in a ruling expected to block thousands of lawsuits alleging it failed to warn people the product could cause cancer. The case came before the justices after a tidal wave of litigation that included some multi-billion-dollar verdicts against the global agrochemical manufacturer Bayer, which acquired Roundup when it bought its original manufacturer Monsanto in 2018. The decision is a victory for the Trump administration, but one that could be tricky politically since allies in the Make America Healthy Again movement want to rein in pesticide use. The High Court, this is why it's so anodyne, man. It's so anodyne to be Maha and be pro-Trump. Trump is, okay, I'm going to try to say these things nicely because I don't want to scare off my Maha mommies and my Maha daddies. Trumpism and MAGA in general is fundamentally aligned with corporate power. This is what you need to understand. It is impossible for this organization, MAGA in particular, to be, to ever be like anti-corporation. Anything that consolidates more power in the hands of fewer corporations, anything that is pro-corporation at the expense of like the average American citizen, they are going to align with. And so I would urge you, if you do actually care about this, please, we need to take back control. We need to take back control of our government from these fucking corporations. Because I got news for you. Bayer definitely lobbied the fuck out of the government. Okay, they continue to this day. And Monsanto did back when it was them. I'm sure that there were plenty of sweet talks and backroom deals going on behind the scenes with Alito or Clarence Thomas or whoever, to make sure that this came out on the side of the corporation. So I'm just letting you know, like there's groups out there who are anti corporate power. One in particular that has been making some waves lately is called the DSA, who wants to take away a lot of that corporate power and put it back in the hands of the people. So I'm telling you, Maha mommies and Maha daddies out there, you're never going to get what you want from these companies unless you actually are able to organize and take back the power that they have taken away from us. Anyway. The High Court in a 7-2 ruling found that the company can't be sued in state courts because federal regulations have found a cancer link unlikely and do not require a warning label. That seems wrong to me. It's definitely a carcinogen. It is a carcinogen. The decision is good for science, farmers, and industries that depend on regulatory clarity for innovation, Bayer said in a statement. Shut the fuck up, Bayer, dude. Ugh. It should help significantly contain the Roundup litigation after nearly a decade of legal battles. Boo-hoo. Boo-hoo. You had to deal with some fucking lawsuits against your company. You're like a multi-billion-dollar company. Come on. An international company, too. I think Bayer is owned by Germany, right? Am I wrong? Is Bayer owned by Germany? Yes, Bayer is a German company. It's a German company. Like, it's not even an American company. Let's see. Though Bayer said the ruling should result in the dismissal of pending lawsuits containing failure to warrant allegations, the company said it plans to proceed with a proposed $7.25 billion class action settlement intended to resolve many of the remaining claims. Yeah, well, okay. Lawyers for some residents pursuing Roundup litigation criticized the court's decision. The Supreme Court ruling wrongly slams the courthouse door on Americans sickened by pesticides, said attorney Christopher Seeger, who is proposed as a claimant's representative in the settlement, but he said a settlement still would allow some people to receive compensation. The case before the Supreme Court was filed by Missouri shout out, resident John Darnell. He developed a cancer called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's the one that is caused by the particular carcinogen that is inside of Roundup. After more than 20 years of serving, by the way, this is not like a unknown thing. Okay, let me just look it up real quick. Roundup cancer. Glyphosate, I think is what it is. Is glyphosate carcinogenic? Let's see if we can find something real quick. Okay, here's a study. Let's read this study. We'll just read the beginning of it. And so in this long-term study published on Tuesday, glyphosate alone in 2 commercial glyphosate-based formulations, Roundup BioFlow, used in the EU and Ranger Pro, used in the US, were administered to rats via drinking water, beginning in prenatal life at doses of 0.5, 5, and 50 milligrams per kilogram body weight per day for 2 years. These doses are currently considered safe by regulatory agencies and correspond to the EU acceptable daily intake and the EU's no observed adverse effects level for glyphosate. And all 3 treatment groups increased incidences of benign and malignant tumors, and multiple anatomic sites were observed compared to controls. These tumors arose in tissues, leukemia, skin, liver, thyroid, nervous system, ovary, mammary gland, adrenal glands, kidney, urinary bladder, bone, endocrine, pancreas, uterus, and spleen. Increased incidences occurred in both sexes, but most of these involve tumors that are rare in Sprague Dawley rats. Background incident less than 1%, with 40% of leukemia deaths in the treated group occurring in early life, and increased early deaths were also observed for other solid tumors. Let's see. We observed early onset and early mortality for a number of rare malignant cancers. These new results provide robust evidence supporting International Agency for Research on Cancer conclusion in 2015 that there is sufficient evidence of carcinogenic of glyphosate in experimental animals. So this is just this is just the glyphosate like entering into like drinking water and stuff, and like entering into your body through, like consumption. But that doesn't even take into account like just like if you put it out on the ground and stuff, if you put it out on the streets and you're like, stepping on it and stuff, it can get absorbed a little bit through your skin too, like I'm just saying, like, I've heard stories of people who like played in cornfields and ended up getting like cancer because they used a whole bunch of Roundup in their cornfields. So, that might be anecdotal. I don't know if there's a study on that one in particular, but there is a direct link from that study that we just read of the primary active ingredient in Roundup causing cancer in these mice. So there you go. Lawyers for some residents, let's see. The case before the Supreme Court was filed by Missouri resident John Durrell. He developed a cancer called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma after more than 20 years of serving as the neighborhood association spray guy, using Roundup on Parks in his historic St. Louis community. A jury agreed that the company failed to warn him about possible cancer dangers and awarded him $1.25 million. Yeah, the jury agreed, but apparently you're not allowed to sue anymore. Even though the jury agrees, you're not allowed to sue. It ain't that great. It's one of thousands of similar cases, including some multi-billion-dollar damage awards. There's still fierce debate about cancer and Roundup's key ingredient, glyphosate. The World Health Organization's international agency classified the chemical as probably carcinogenic in 2015. The EPA has determined that it's not likely to cause cancer in humans when used as directed. I'm highly skeptical. The agency approved a label without a cancer warning, and Bayer argues that it's required to follow those federal standards, not the state laws that Durnell and others have sued under. The ruling still could allow other suits alleging problems with the way the product was designed. Bayer disputes the cancer claims, but previously set aside $16 billion to settle cases. What a steal for them, man! Only $16 billion for causing like ungodly amounts of cancer. I don't know for sure. I'm not making like a factual statement, but like just judging by that study that I just read and my understanding of it, and just the amount that they are willing to shell out, they know that it causes cancer. If they set aside this money, they know that it causes cancer, and they're like, oh, this should be enough. This should be enough to keep it under the rug. A federal judge recently ruled that the proposed settlement will be heard in Missouri State Court, where many of the lawsuits have been filed. At the same time, the company has tried to persuade states to pass laws shielding it from liability and failure to warn lawsuits. And 3 states have agreed. Of course, I'm sure that those politicians got plenty of money from the Bayer lobby, I'm sure. About 200,000 Roundup-related claims have been made against Bayer, mostly from home users. It has stopped using glyphosate and Roundup sold in the U.S. residential lawn and garden market. The company has said it might have to consider pulling glyphosate from U.S. ag markets if it keeps getting sued. Agricultural industry groups say it could have a devastating effect on the food supply, but pesticides have also created a rift between the Trump and the Maha movement, whatever. Well, there you go, people. That's the Supreme Court situation right now.